Hello friends and welcome back to Purus Tech Java tutorials. So in the last session we had covered the polymorphism using overloading. So how the polymorphism is achieved using overloading. In this session we are going to cover about the overriding of methods, which is one more form of polymorphism. This is called the runtime polymorphism. So let's start. So what is this method overriding? Here I have the simple definition. If the method is redefined in the subclass as in defined as superclass. So what does this means? Let's say, let me take one example. This is one class I already have created just to save some time. So overriding example, which I have main method, and here one bank class, here one SBI bank, which is extending the bank. Now this bank is the superclass of SBI bank. SBI bank is the subclass and bank is the superclass. So what about the first point? If the method is redefined in the subclass as in defined as superclass. So if a method is already there in the superclass and we are redefining that in this subclass, then it becomes overriding, but it has to satisfy these many conditions, three conditions. So let me write a method here, public void get interest rate. So here let's say I'm defining just a sysout interest rate is 0, no, let's say 9.1. And if I'm redefining this particular method here in the subclass, then this is called the overriding. So I'm overriding this get interested method in this subclass, right? So I'm overriding. So what are the condition? Let's see. Return type should be the same or a subclass of return type as defined in the superclass. So return type. Let's see what is the return type in the superclass. This is void. So this should be same, right? In the subclass, this return type should be the same as of this return type, else one more condition, this return type should be a subclass of this particular return type, right? Let's say here if I'll do integer, right, and it returns, so this we have not yet covered, like the return types. As of now we had discussed from the first beginning of the session to till this session. So let me first illustrate what is return type. Okay, let me take one method just for uh, understanding, and in the meantime let's try to comment this out. So public integer get value, and if I'll say return, so what I'm returning, one integer value from this method, return 1. So earlier we used to write void here like this, but as of now this particular method is returning integer, and for this if you are defining the return type here, you need to return from this method like this, the return keyword, and then you need to return the value. So this is the return type. Let's try to run this program using this return type so that we'll be clear on this. Here I will create an object of bank bank equal to new bank, bank dot get value. So get value will return integer. To print what is returning from here, either I need to hold this particular return type into a corresponding return type like this, integer return value equal to this, and then I'll do a sysout return value is, and then I'll say return value, right? So as of now I have not used this class, so it is in gray color. Even this method, it is in gray color, so I'm not at all using this particular class as of now, and only I'm using this particular class. And here actually I had written some exception, will come this later. So let's remove this and then try to run this program using the return type. As you can see here, it is printing return value is 1. So from where this 1 is coming, it is coming from this particular method because we are returning the value 1 from this method. So we are clear on this, I feel, the return type. So let's go back to our business of explaining the overriding. So let's just remove this and let's clear off all this, uncomment this part. So return type is same. It covers the first point, that is return type should be same or a subclass of the return type as defined by the super class. So this is same. Now let's go to the second point. Method signature should be same. As you know, method signature is consisting of method name, parameter types, and the number of parameters. Here you see this particular method is not taking any parameter, even this also, and this method name are same. So the signature of this method is same as defined in superclass. So it satisfied the second condition also. Now the third condition is exception should be same or a subclass of exception type defined by the superclass. So exception. Now this is one of the most important feature of Java, exception, which we will cover detailedly in one more session. But in this session, I will just uh, discuss on overall basis, just a brief on the exception. So what is an exception? Let's try to define. So what is an exception? Exception is an event which occurs during the program execution which will disturb the flow of the program. Okay, so this is the actual definition of the exception. This is an event which occurs during the program execution which will disturb the flow of the program. So flow of the program. What is the flow of the program? Let's say in this method I have 10 statements, right? Let's say I have some 10 statements or some number of statements. Then whatever is written here, let's say in second line, this is second line, this is third line, something third line, this fourth line, fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, like that. So some logic I have written here. Let's say in the normal case, in a happy path, what will happen? So this particular method will execute and there won't be any problem during this execution. So in that one, what will happen? First, second statement will execute, then third statement, then fourth, then fifth, then sixth, like that. So the flow goes on. Flow is continuous flow based on your logic, based on if else, based on something like continue, based on break, something like that. Exception happens. Exception in the sense, let's say unwanted event. For example, let me just give you here one example. So here, let me try to write integer a equal to 9 divided by 0. Okay. So this particular integer value I have written like 9 divided by 0. This case, suppose I don't know what comes the value, right? So in that case, what will happen? Let's try to run this program using this particular get interest rate method. What we will get? So bank dot get interest rate. Now in the normal flow, what should happen? It should execute this and it should execute the second one statement. So it should print the interest rate is 9.1. Let's try to run this. See here, we are not at all getting this particular output because of this statement. So this statement is disturbing the full flow of this method. So what happens? One exception happened here. Exception is an unwanted event during the program execution. So here the unwanted is arithmetic exception divided by 0. So we cannot divide any number by 0. This will throw the arithmetic exception and it is there in the java.lang package. So as of now, I have just told you the basic of exception. Okay, so this exception, there is some exception hierarchy. It is like the superclass of any exception is exception class itself. There is a class called exception in the same package. So let's try to define here. This may throws exception, right? This may throw exception. So we can write actually like this, throws clause. So this is called throws clause and there is a throw clause also. So we'll cover all those in while covering the exception part. So as of now, just remember that if any method defines like this, that it may throw some exception, then the subclass can throw the subclass of this or this particular exception. It can throw like this. So I can write like this, throws exception, right? Or I can say throws arithmetic exception. So this covers the second point. Exception should be the same or a subclass of the exception what is defined by the superclass. And here this parent class, superclass, throws the exception. See here, I'm getting a compile time exception. What it is saying is unhandled exception. So this exception I need to handle. So how many ways exception can be handled? It can be either using throws clause or try catch. Don't worry about these things. We will cover in the exception session. So I'm doing throws exception clause. So apart from this particular conditions, there are some more conditions which we need to add it here. The subclass can give more or same access modifier than the parent class. What does this mean? Let's see. Here, let's say the parent class is protected, right? The parent class access modifier is protected. But here I am expanding this protected to a public because public is more viewable than the protected, right? So we can do this, but we cannot do, if this is protected, we cannot define like this private. Here it will give error because private is more restrictive than the protected. So whatever is there in this parent class access modifier, this should be either same or it can give more access like public. This is the fourth point. So these are the four rules we need to adhere during the overriding of a method. Okay, there are some more concepts or there are some more things we need to know here. Some points like private method or private methods cannot be overridden. Final methods also cannot be overridden. So these 2 points we need to remember. Also one more thing is static methods also cannot be overridden, right? So these three things you just remember. Let's see the first point. Private methods cannot be overridden. Let's say this is private method. You see here, this particular method is not a overriding situation because it is the private method. This is a separate method which belongs to this particular class and it will not come under the overriding situation. As you can see, this is protected, more restricted access. So let me change to public and save, and see here it will say that static method cannot be overridden, right? Cannot override a static method. But if we will make this as a static, what it will become? This also is not a overriding things. Overriding will not happen because this belongs to this particular class. So static method cannot be overridden. Instead, it is called the method hiding. So as of now, we have seen what is the overriding definition, but we have not seen how it works as a in the runtime. So let me try to delete this thing. New SBI bank, and then bank dot get interest rate. Let me remove all these static things because as of now I need to illustrate how the overriding works. So as you can see here, the bank is a reference variable of bank type and it is pointing to the object SBI bank. So at the runtime, it will call the method which is defined in the SBI bank object, not at the bank level, right? So it will print, let me remove this also so that it should not throw exception. Let me remove this, also this one. even this. So here SBI Bank objects method it will get called. It will call this particular method. So at the runtime it is knowing that we are trying to call this particular objects method, not which is defined in this particular class, right? So runtime it is deciding which method to call. So that is why it is called runtime polymorphism. It has two forms. One is in this subclass and one is in the superclass. Let's try to run this program. As we can see, the output has come. Interest rate is 9.1. So this is printing. So it is dynamically all the or at the runtime it is deciding that this particular SBI Bank method has to run. Let me just take one more example. Let's say class ICICI Bank, and here let's say the interest rate becomes 9.2. In the last example, actually we had given the same number. Let's try to make it different number, 9.0, 9.1 and 9.2. So that will clear which all methods is getting called. If I'll write bank equal to new ICICI Bank and then bank dot get interest rate. See here what I'm doing. At line number 8, I'm referring to ICICI Bank object. So it will call whatever method defined in ICICI Bank. It will call the method for which the object is created. Let's try to run this program and see. See here, for the first time SBI Bank rate I'm getting, and for the second time the ICICI Bank rate I'm getting. So we have covered the overriding, that is one form of polymorphism, that is called runtime polymorphism. How we can achieve, that is achieved through method overriding. So in the next session we are going to cover the string types like integer and normal data types what we had seen earlier. So there is something called string buffer, string builder. So we'll cover that things in the next session. Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned.